Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu discussed ways to counter Iranian threats in his meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in his visit to Tel Aviv. Now, Netanyahu's office said the threat from Iran and the need for both countries to join forces against it were raised during the talks. The Israeli Prime Minister welcomed the U.S. support in its fight against Iran-aligned arms groups in the region. According to the reports, Netanyahu also told the U.S. Secretary of State that the assassination attempt against him cannot be ignored after his house in Caesarea was targeted by the Hezbollah drone last week. Iran figured in Blinken's meeting with the Israeli defense minister as well. Yoav Gallant told the U.S. diplomat that his government expects Washington's support when it attacks Iran in response to a missile strike earlier this month. Gallant said the U.S. stance with Israel following its attack on Iran will strengthen regional deterrence and weaken the Iranian axis. Meanwhile, Iran's former chief of Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, Mohammad Ali Jafri, said that Israel could mount a desperate, limited and symbolic attack against Tehran than making any significant move to say it has retaliated. Now, according to the Iranian media reports, he said Iran's response will depend on the intensity of Israel's retaliation, and in case of a significant attack, Iran will retaliate with a higher intensity offensive. Furthermore, in his 11th trip to the region since the war began, Israel and Hamas erupted last year. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also held talks with Netanyahu on post-war Gaza governance. The Israeli PM expressed hope that the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar will have a positive impact on the return of the hostages held in Gaza for more than a year. Now, the situation in Gaza came up for discussion during Blinken's meeting with the Israeli president as well. The leaders said Sinwar's death has created a new opportunity to end the conflict.
Following the killing of Sinwar and the other circumstances that have evolved, there is a unique opportunity to make a special effort to employ all tools necessary and possible to move forward and bring the hostages back home.
I believe very much that the death of Sinwar does create an important opportunity to bring the hostages home, to bring the war to an end, and to ensure Israel's security.
Meanwhile, massive protest erupted outside Blinken's hotel in Tel Aviv as families of U.S.-Israeli hostages in Gaza voiced their anger over stalled negotiations for the release of the captives. The demonstrators chanted slogans and displayed signs demanding to secure a deal.
Now that Sinwar is gone, we are hoping that the pressure from the United States is going to be immense on the parties, whether it's Qatar, Egypt, Israel, and of course Hamas, to finalize the deal and bring them home.
We are, according to the United States, waiting on Hamas to figure out what and who are the decision makers. I would act decisively, proactively to get a deal on the table for Hamas to consider and put an end to all of this, including the suffering of the people in Gaza.
And joining us on the broadcast is Mark Brolin. Mark is a geopolitical strategist and an author. He now joins us live from London. Thanks for making the time for us, Mark. Now, previous efforts to end the war in Gaza and contain the regional fallout have failed, as did a bid spearheaded by President Joe Biden and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron to secure a temporary ceasefire in Lebanon. What is to say that this time it's different?
I think the stakes are a bit higher now, because if Israel and Iran are fighting each other, that's a major escalation in a way. In a way, it has already happened with the missile attack against Israel, and if there is return fire, it might end poorly. Then again, as you mentioned before, in Iran is saying that something symbolic might be coming from Israel, and that is, I think, is sort of forestalling that this might they might be able to take something on the chin if it's not too big. So that's sort of a positive side. But I think overall we are seeing lots of huffing and puffing during this negotiation game going on. But precisely because the stakes are higher, I think there is also a few positives. There could be a more positive outcome this time.
Right. Mark, the Israeli Prime Minister expressed hope that the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar will have a positive impact on the return of the hostages held in Gaza and the hope to end the conflict. Well, as was the hope after the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah, of Fuad Shukr, of Ismail Haniyeh. Where are we headed here?
Well, Nasrallah was the guy who most fiercely was against releasing the hostages. So in that sense, perhaps the Israeli Prime Minister might be right in a sense. The rabbit out of the hat in this case, it's not the most likely scenario, but it's not an insignificant likelihood that it happens. The rabbit out of the hat is that the hostages are released in return for Israeli not launching a counterattack against Iran. It's not totally impossible, because that's what many players actually want. It's certainly what the US would want, and they are exerting massive pressure on Israel right now. There is even rumors that the plans that were leaked, that the plans a few days ago about the US assessment of the situation in Israel, that it was leaked on purpose in order to make it more difficult for Israel to launch this attack. So massive pressure from Washington against Israel, and that might also change the game. Of course, this ties into the US election. If there is an escalation right now, it will be a major downside for the Democrats. So they are doing whatever they can to stop that from happening.
You spoke of US, and of course I forgot to add Saifuddin to the list. Now, Iran has recently joined BRICS this year. Other than Iran's oil supply to the rest of the world getting curtailed, is the United States at all concerned that Iran might now have the backing of China and Russia?
Oh, absolutely. This is all part of the game. I mean, we have sort of a new Cold War in that sense. So that this is a major problem. Then again, we have seen that China is a little bit turning away from the Ukraine situation, and Russia is not doing very well in a sense. I mean, in Ukraine, they are also much weaker than we thought before the beginning of the war. So, but absolutely, as you're saying, it is a two-sided thing right now. But I don't think Iran can expect so much support. They can't expect any support at all, almost, from Russia, and they can expect possibly only little from China.
Can you give us a quick word on the Saudi Arabia and the Israel deal?
Well, I think part of the reason that this problem turned into a problem in the first place was that the relationships between Saudi Arabia and Israel were about to become a little bit better with the Abraham Accords and all that. So that might have been one reason why Hamas launched this attack on October 7, to stop this defreezing of the relationship. And I think we can see now that we are moving towards perhaps a relaunch of those accords again. I think the frostiness between Saudi Arabia and Israel it has over a long time, long before October 7 attacks, long before that happened, they actually were going in a more friendly direction. And I think we can see the signs of that happening yet again.
Thank you so much, Mark Brolin, for joining us on the broadcast today.
Pleasure.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.